Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Paul Voss. I'm the Managing Director of Euroheat and Power. I'm sure I know many of you, but not all of you. So hello from me. Thanks for being here, and not for the first time in the last 15 months or so. I find myself expressing regret that we can't all be together in the same place, but gratitude for you having made the time to be with us. And I'm looking forward to what I think is going to be a really interesting and informative hour. We're going to talk about the Dutch gas phase out today, which is, of course, of particular interest to everybody because it's such a fundamental change in a country which has previously been very reliant on gas for heat. It's also a bit more than that for me. I mean, there's something quite personal going on here. I was in a discussion just yesterday with an official at the European Commission who challenged me a little bit on the decarbonization of district heating and said, you know, Paul, and I'm quoting, you're a nice guy and all that, but we can't live off potential forever. And it's true that for 5 years now or a bit more, I've been making speeches about district heating and its potential to decarbonize cities, its potential to make the whole energy system more efficient, integrating renewables, and so on and so on. And there are so many great stories that you can tell about what district heating can do. But it's also true that we are getting to a stage now where we need to move beyond case studies and nice examples and start to make these great things more the rule than the exception. We need to start delivering and quickly because 2050 is no longer a science fiction date. It's a horizon that we can just about see and certainly feel when it comes to the calendar that we have for infrastructure planning and so on. So we do need to get going. And for me, it's really exciting to be able to tell stories about things that are happening in real life on the ground, and not only in Copenhagen, Stockholm, and Helsinki, but in places where this just wasn't the case previously. So with that, I'm really looking forward to hearing the story of what's going on in the Netherlands, and more specifically with the city of Rotterdam. We're going to have a very interesting panel. Afterwards, we'll have a Q&A section, which I will moderate. So please use the Q&A function to write your questions in, and I'll try and pick them all up. In the meantime, I'd like to hand over to Marcus Witt from Vattenfall, who's our board member representing Vattenfall at Euroheat, who will introduce our two speakers and then move us on into the panel discussion. Marcus, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for your introduction. And I'm very happy actually that we have this session today, because in Rotterdam, we as Vattenfall, we are really happy and proud to be in a partnership with the city of Rotterdam to realize the potential which you just talked about. And I would really like to thank Petra de Groene, Director for Economic Affairs and Sustainability in the city of Rotterdam, who is with us today, just like our responsible sales director, Arno, and they both will run this webinar and tell us what we together, Vattenfall together with the city, do in Rotterdam to actually change the city towards lower emissions, higher decarbonization, more sustainability. And in that sense, I would like to hand over to both of them to guide us through the presentation. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you, Marcus and Paul, for introducing us. And let me speak for Petra and myself that we are very happy that we've been invited to tell you something on what is happening in the Netherlands in facing the climate ambitions and the gas phase out. We will start the presentation, and I will start it actually with a couple of sheets with a sketch on what is driving this ambition for gas phasing out in the Netherlands, and then specifically natural gas, of course. And we will then go into a more deep dive with Petra, who will take then over from me for the city of Rotterdam and what this ambition that we have in the Netherlands does mean for the city of Rotterdam. And then together we will go into a little bit deeper into some cases that we are actually ongoing at this stage, and the ambitions we are taking and what we see and the first lessons we learn in these studies we do have. Next slide, please. Yeah, the ambition to create a natural gas-free built environment actually comes from two influences in the Netherlands. One, of course, is the climate, and specifically driven by the Climate Agreement of Paris. In the Netherlands has been drafted a climate agreement on local level or on Dutch level, agreeing on a substantial CO2 reduction in order to meet the Paris goals. The other one is the problem that has arisen in the last decennia, with the extraction of gas from the Groningen field. As you all know, I think natural gas has been a natural resource in the Netherlands, found somewhere in the 50s, beginning extraction in the 60s of the last century, and has brought a lot of prosperity and good, and also quite a good quite clean fossil fuel, of course. But now we see the disadvantages of it. The extraction has caused several earthquakes, larger and smaller earthquakes in the province of Groningen, where the Groningen gas field is lying, causing cracks in buildings, people feeling unsafe, and a lot of turmoil has been ongoing the last years of people saying, okay, enough is enough, stop with this gas extraction in the Netherlands and give us our country back, so to say. Therewith, the government said, okay, we need to reduce, we need to minimize, and actually from 2022 ongoing, the ambition is to minimize or eventually stop gas winning from the extraction fields and the Groningen gas field. Therewith, the Netherlands has become, recent years already, in trying to reduce these extraction from Groningen to a net importer of natural gas from abroad. Next slide, please. So the vision on the climate of the Dutch climate agreement is on diverse tables. One of them is the built environment. The ambition in the end, and you can see that in the picture on the right side, is to get all the 7 million homes in the Netherlands natural gas free by 2050, and also totally CO2 free. So the new heating sources, of course, have to be CO2 neutral by that time. And in between, in 2030, there's a step in the middle with the ambition to have 1.5 million homes in the Netherlands natural gas free or natural gas free ready. So prepared to become natural gas free in a couple of years following. Several tables and several agreements have been made in order to be able to reach this ambition, of which you can see the 5 pillars here. So a neighborhood-oriented approach, agreements on arrangement and standards, the financing, pricing, and subsidies instruments, and also plans on decarbonization of the heat itself. And in the middle is the starter motor of social housing, which is at this moment the most concrete one. Has been set up last year between the social housing corporation sector and the heat companies in the Netherlands, together with municipalities, the association of renters, and also the relevant ministries, and saying, okay, this is the way we want to start with the social housing sector as a speeding up, as a starting engine for getting started with this transition in the built environment. Next slide, please. And you already see the first steps being taken. You can see that in the pictures here, some 46 districts have been designated already and granted subsidy from national government to become natural gas free, and piloting with diverse technique, not only with heat grids, but also with all electric decentral variants. Municipalities have the obligation to draft transition visions in their for the heating in their cities, stating when and with which technique districts in the city have to get natural gas free. The start motor engine the starting motor has started with a subsidy that has been said, okay, to the social housing corporations, you get a subsidy when you get rid of natural gas. The same has been done already also with for private homeowners, and we see now really happening the first steps ongoing to really get into the first districts and to really get natural gas phased out in these districts. And then I want to give the presentation to Petra, who is going to tell us something on the situation in the city of Rotterdam.
Thank you, Arno, and good afternoon, everyone. Next slide, please. First, I will give you some facts and figures on Rotterdam and the CO2 emissions. I don't know if any one of you has ever been in Rotterdam, but it is known as a big port city. And surrounding that harbor area, there is a lot of industry, mostly petrochemical, electricity plants, but different kinds of industry. And because of this big industry area, the city area is responsible for around 20% of total Dutch CO2 emissions. So that's actually a lot. Within Rotterdam, more than 90% comes from the industry area and 10% from the city itself. Our objectives are the same as the Paris Agreement, so 49% CO2 reduction in 2030, climate neutral in 2050. And then because of the whole Groningen discussion, we also have the objective to have all our housing natural gas free in 2050. The government of this city council actually had the goal to change the incline in CO2 emissions we had before 2020, which was more than 30 megaton in a declining trend. And that seems to be, we seem to accomplish that goal, because last year it was about 28 megatons. So we're, the trend is now declining, but we still have a lot to do to achieve our goals. In Rotterdam, we kind of copied the same approach as on a national level. So we created coalitions with several partners in the city, more than 150. That social housing companies, but also smaller companies, different kinds of stakeholders. And we made more than 55 deals, how to come to these, climate deals that can help achieve those goals. And what you see in the graph below is the effect of these, calculated effect of these deals, where the darker green one are more certain and the lighter green one are uncertain, and the gray area you see in the 2030 bar graph is still, we still have to make plans to achieve that part of the goal. But we monitor the progress annually by an independent agency who will look at the plans and monitor if they actually contribute enough to our goals. Next slide, please. But first, what we did was look at in the larger regional area, the Rotterdam, The Hague area, look at expected demand and supply for fossil fuel-free electricity and waste heat. And what you see is that if you look at the demand and supply for fossil-free electricity, there will be a shortage of fossil-free electricity, and that is mostly due because of the big industry we have in this region. If you look at industry, if they want to change the carbon footprint and look at other energy sources than natural gas, oil, coal and oil, they have to look at solutions like hydrogen, but also electrolyze some of their processes. So they need a lot of fossil-free electricity to achieve their goals. On the other hand, there is a surplus of waste heat. And that also creates an opportunity for the built environment. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, so we try to translate this bigger picture into approach per neighborhood, where we zoom in from this bigger picture to every neighborhood, how we can sculpt this transition path. By looking for ways to minimize total costs, by looking for ways to minimize the inconvenience for the neighborhoods. We also want to make sure the distribution of costs between the different stakeholders is fair. And we're also looking for ways to create opportunities by combining this project with other projects, especially in the social projects. Next slide, please. So the next phase was to come to the selection of the several neighborhoods where we will start this transition process. And what we did is we collected a lot of plans from different stakeholders. First we started to collecting plans from, for instance, the Social Housing Corporation, their renovation plans, but we also collected plans for a renewal of our own sewer network, but also a planned renewal for the gas network. because the last thing you want to do is, if you have to renew the gas network because of safety issues, renew it now, and then maybe 10 years later you have to take it out again and replace it by a district heating network. So these are some of the plans we connected. We also looked at the different neighborhoods, at the buildings that were located there, the density of housing. If it's a very dense area, that will definitely be more efficient in cost to change to district heating. But also, if you have a lot of high-rise buildings with multi-families living in those buildings, that it usually helps within minimizing costs, because with one piece of pipe you can really change several households. Also, the date of constructions of the several of the buildings is very important. If they're too old, before 1966, usually it's very expensive to change to the district heating. There are usually more problems also with insulation, but also with foundation. So that makes it very expensive to change all these buildings to district heating. And the newer buildings usually are very well insulated, and there are also sometimes other alternative that is district heating. So there are the age of the different buildings makes a difference in how if you can create opportunities. And last but not least, we looked at the social characteristics of the neighborhoods. How motivated are the inhabitants when it comes to climate change? What is their spendable income? And are there parties within those neighborhoods who really can help the neighborhoods to change? And we collected all these maps and all these data, and we put it all together and created a map. Next slide, please. So on this map, you will see the alternative, the best alternative for natural gas per neighborhood. And red areas means that those neighborhoods, the best alternative is district heating. The blue areas means the best alternative is all electric. And the darker the color is, or the very dark red colors, that means the alternatives is really the best alternative. So it's by far out the best alternative. And the lighter the color is, the lighter red areas, it means it's close. It could be district heating. It could also be, especially with new innovations and another technology. And then we started to select 5 pilot projects. We didn't go for the most easiest neighborhood per se, because we wanted to learn in this 5 pilot projects. So we picked 2 where Vattenfall has a concession to and the district heating network. We picked 1 in the north of the Rotterdam, where another district heating company has a concession. And we picked 2 neighborhoods where there is no district heating network, and so no concession. So everything is up in the open. And to illustrate that we didn't pick the most easiest neighborhoods, we also looked at the spendable income. Rotterdam has a lower average spendable income than the Netherlands in general. But 2 of the neighborhoods we picked for the pilot projects, Pendrecht, which is in the Vattenfall area, and Bospolder Tussendijken, even are outliers below the average income level in Rotterdam. So that means it's a really, really big social challenge. Next slide, please. And we are approaching these 5 pilot projects with some starting principles. First of all, we strive to make the transition easy and possible for all our residents, and burden as much as we can. So we want to take away all the hassle and make it as easy as possible. And that actually is very much appreciated. We make a proposition to our residents because right now changing from natural gas to district heating, it's only on a voluntary basis. It's not mandatory yet. There is some legislation in progress where it can be made mandatory in the future, but right now it's still voluntary. So our proposition has to be attractive. It is freedom of choice. You can either join or you don't join. We want to make our proposition simple and easy to explain. There is also an element of an own contribution every household has to make. Nothing good is for free, as we say in the Netherlands. So in the first 2 pilot projects in Heindijk, Arno will talk more about that later, we ask 1,500 euros as an own contribution. Our offer has to be inclusive, so accessible for everyone. So we also have a whole arrangement of interest-free loans. We help in case of financial problems. The whole plan has to be fraud-proof and feasible, and we also offer several add-on packages, for instance, subsidies or loans when it comes to solar panels. So you actually make an investment where you can get some return on. And now I will give the word back to Arno.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, then we go a little bit into the pilot area of Heindijk, as Petra already mentioned. Please go to the next slide. Yeah, this is a pilot area that has been selected in 2018 already by the municipality of Rotterdam to become natural gas free before 2028, actually. It consists in total of 631 homes, of which some 450 are with housing corporations. One of them we already contracted for connecting to district heating, and the rest is 180 homes are privately owned. And the approach we are taking here together with the municipality, and I must say the municipality has an very important role to play in this, and maybe click 4 times, I think then all will arise from 4 perspectives. One is technical, so looking into what is possible and what is actually needed to get rid of the gas connection and connect to the district heating grid. Bear in mind also the cooking has to change. Most of the households in the Netherlands also cook on gas. When we want to get rid of the gas grid in the district, we also need to provide a solution for another way of cooking. Financial. So how does the business case work? We agreed upon transparency in this business case. That is then between the stakeholders, the partners, the municipality and Vattenfall, looking into this business case. We have the concession here. We are the monopolist for this area. So we need to build on trust and saying, okay, what we are doing here with a lot of subsidy from the municipality has to be fair and square. And it needs to be a reasonable return for the heating company. But we wanted to give insight there as well to the municipality. But on the other hand, financially also, what Petra already said, a lot of subsidy to be granted to the privately home owners. This is an area with low income compared to the average in the Netherlands. We really need to take along the people in order to make it happen, to make it possible for them to also get into this transition. We also looked into diverse opportunities to combine, for example, with the sewage replacement in this area to cut costs. And last, and certainly not least, the social transition. A lot of the people in the Netherlands and also in this area are not aware and certainly not busy with this gas transition, something else on their mind in day-to-day life, not the gas transition at all. And in the next slide, we will go into details what has been done for taking the social transition. The first step that was taken, it was trying to understand what is happening in this neighborhood. In-depth interviews have been taken with inhabitants, and then you see that natural gas transition is really not top of mind. All kind of other things like how do we get to a nearby park? There was a fence created there, and that was really a social thing that was happening in the talk of the town in this district, not the natural gas-free transition. And then furthermore, taking from this social marketing research, going into informing the inhabitants to make their choice and really take that from a personal approach. There were a lot of personal meetings at home, at home of the inhabitants around their kitchen table, talking about natural gas transition, what the alternative is, what the possibilities are, and how they could be helped in getting this transition ongoing. An options menu, you see that on the right side of this picture, was created to give the people the ability to choose, either go for the full Monty, go for the district heating transition at all, or just go for the cooking change and now change to electrical cooking and not phasing out gas immediately for the whole home, or wait. There's 2 moments have been created for people to come into this transition, one next year, 2022, and one later on in time, 2027. Electric cooking workshops have been held. A cookbook has been created, and also within the municipality of Rotterdam, close cooperation was with the social department in case that inhabitants had financial problems, which was also in some cases the problem that was coming out. Next slide, please. So really getting into understanding the end user, that's really what we try to do. And I must say, the municipality has taken a strong role in that. Trying to build on trust in this personal approach, having real people at the table from the municipality, also from Vattenfall as a company, when we come for technical inspection and saying, okay, how can we do this transition in this specific home? Testing the propositions with a sounding board of inhabitants, testing communication tools. And we also had a special approach for the associations of property owners, offering them, for example, second opinion by experts, by technical experts, as well as offering counseling from a lawyer to represent the contract part with the Vattenfall company. Next slide. And on the other side, we also face, and that's from the district heating company, then also an interesting part where we are stepping in, some technical challenges. We, in this area, 5 different house types have been identified, and you can see them on the pictures here. And every type we drafted its own solution to become natural gas free. Every building had a different structure where, for example, the current individual gas boiler was placed, and we need to get to that place. We need to have, we are cooperating with building companies to see how can we do this effectively, cost effectively, but also with a minimum of a thermal in the building. The transition will be done in inhabited states. So people will live there when we do the transition. This is also an additional challenging thing. We really need to talk that through with the home owners, with the inhabitants, in order to give them a secure feeling, okay, what is being done here is being done in a sound manner. And on the pictures, you can see all kind of different stories that we see when we come into homes, and what you find in the cupboards, for example, where the gas meter is, and what you have to do in order to get rid of those and to really get connected to the district heating grid. Next slide, please. Where are we now? 60% of the people have said, okay, I want to cooperate with this. I sign in, and this is going to be connected to district heating the coming year. One social housing company will be connected in 2027. A few say, okay, I don't want to be connected to district heating, so that's their choice, but it's only 2 to 3%. And the other group, the other around 8% says, okay, we will wait for the next decision moment, which is then in 2027. And then Petra, back to you for the scale up.
Yes, thank you, Arno. Yeah, so we really learned a lot in Heindijk, but that was around 200 houses, I think, private owned houses, and now we're scaling up already a little bit on the next pilot area, Pendrecht. There's a few thousand houses. And then the next scale up is for the whole south of Rotterdam. So next slide, please. So also in Pendrecht, we did a social marketing research, 12,000 residents, mostly young families, multicultural backgrounds. That's also very important because especially of the cooking discussion, people like to stir fry a lot and they are worried that stir frying on an electrical cooker doesn't work that well. Low spendable income, like I said before, and so mostly on top of their minds is making ends meet. They're not really, put a lot of effort or concern or money into improvement of their house or maintenance, and climate change is definitely not on top of their minds. So we looked into, so where do we find resistance when it comes to this topic? There are a few issues that are very important to consider. You encounter resistance when they feel there is a lack of choice. You encounter resistance when they feel there is a lot of uncertainty, and when they feel there's power pressure. For instance, because they feel, they be in, there is a monopolist where they'll be dependent on. Mostly people are concerned about perceived loss, so not what they might actually gain. I already talked about cooking on natural gas, which is very important, but also, for instance, they worry about that they have a nicely maintained garden, and when you change the natural gas network for district heating, somebody will come in and, you know, break open the street and the sidewalks and also make a mess out of their garden. These are also very real concerns within this neighborhood. The other thing we learned from this research is that it's really useful to use familiar channels and places within the community. There is a community center, but also schools. But we also learned that sometimes, for instance, in a different neighborhood, there's a group of residents who, you know, join together in, for instance, a playground, in maintaining a playground. And usually those social networks within the neighborhood are very good places to start when it comes to distribution of information, because those are people within the neighborhood they trust. And you have to make sure that you are fair and transparent in the information. So don't, you know, paint a nicer picture than it is, but be fair and transparent on how much it costs when, you know, they have to make a decision. Make sure they have time to think about it, what the distribution of costs is, and make a proposition that is simple, but also make a proposition with convenient choices. And you saw how we did that in Heindijk. Next slide, please. So also in Pendrecht, we're looking for opportunities to linking with other projects, creating jobs. There are training programs, for instance, for energy coaches. And these energy coaches are also important in preventing poverty. So they actually help people in the neighborhood how to save on their energy bills and what they can do with small measures to save on the energy bills. And that will actually help them making ends meet. And we're also looking for ways to creating win-wins, for instance, with vouchers where that people can use for local shops for insulation strips. And, you know, that helps the energy transition and also helps local business. And then also in Pendrecht, we're looking for links with the sewer renewal and all the other examples we talked about before. Next slide, please. So, and now the bigger challenge is, you know, we had Heindijk. We're now, I think Pendrecht we did 2 weeks ago. We made an offer to the people in the neighborhood 2 weeks ago. And so that it just started. But of course, you know, we have to stop piloting at one point and start the next phase, and that is scaling up. And we created a process together with Vattenfall, together with social housing corporations, and there are 4 of them in Rotterdam, to join our forces together and to really think about the next phase. And so we're looking, starting still with the neighborhood-oriented approach. We're looking for ways to lower costs, to make it even more efficient. And we did that from the start on in a very transparent manner. So we co-created together a business case. And I think that's very unique, because mostly you have a business case of the district heating company and somebody else says something about it, they either like it or they don't like it. But in this case, we put all our data together. So the data from Vattenfall, information from the municipality, information from the social housing corporations, and we put it all together in a joint business case. And we're looking at the business case, what actually makes a difference to make it, to make it more efficient. And one of these elements, for instance, is that the speed of connections, or the how do you say it? Yeah, how fast different households are coming connected to the district heating network really makes a difference. So if it's, the speed is high, it's becoming more efficient. If it takes a long time, it's becoming less efficient. Of course, you see that in the costs, the total costs. Next slide, please. So what have we learned so far? And Arno, you will add if I forget something. First of all, you have to build trust. You have to build trust between the stakeholders working on this energy transition. So municipality, housing corporation, district heat company, but also building trust within the neighborhood. Transparency is key, transparency towards the homeowners, but also transparency within these stakeholders, between these stakeholders cooperating together. The participation process is very important. Yeah, you have to take them all the way from the beginning of the journey to the end. It's not only the first lesson learned, it's not only a technical and a financial transition, it's a social transition. So really get to know the new neighborhood, listen to the inhabitants. Communication is complicated because there is no one Rotterdammer. There are different kinds of groups with different opinions. Some people just want to have it, want to have the information as easy as possible. Other ones are very involved and also think of their own solutions. So yeah, that's also a very important lessons. And for the scaling up phase, there are also some challenges. We need to find a balance between the personal approach, which was very effective in Heindijk. But if we have to do that for the whole of Rotterdam, it's yeah, it takes a lot of work. So we need to find a way to be personal, but also to upscale the model a little bit of participation. We need to find more cost reductions. And you need to find ways to, at one hand, yeah, find a general model, but also leave room for customization. I don't know, Arno.
No, I think you're quite complete, Petra. Maybe just on the scaling up, I think that's really important as well to reduce cost in the end. If you want to make this transition happening, at the end we see that low cost for the consumer to be able to take this transition is really key. Yeah, so we have to look for cost reduction possibilities. So I really like this way of cooperating with a transparent business case, but also we need to get into these districts and really get the as I call it always, the machine going, plannable, realizable through the districts, step by step, taking people along. But that we really have to take that step now, and that's crucial for getting this heating transition in the Netherlands as a success. I think that was it from us. Oh yeah, yes. We hope to welcome you to Rotterdam.
Yes, because Rotterdam will like to host European Euro Heat and Power in 2023.
Yeah, physically, please.
Physically, yes.
Okay. Thank you both very much for that extremely rich conversation. I really enjoyed it. And it seems the audience did too, as there are questions. I also have some of my own, but I'm going to start by reading these to you as they come in, and you guys can sort of answer them one or both depending. Let me get this first one from Kurt Marlin from Comsoft. How are responsibilities shared or split between Vattenfall and Rotterdam City when it comes to master planning, network planning in the near future and the longer term? And if I could kind of piggyback on the question and ask, because it's great to see you two in such a collaborative state, but I wonder, where are the challenges in working together? Are there sources of tension where the interests of the company and the city might diverge, or has it all been quite smooth sailing?
Yeah, maybe to go into this planning first. The planning is a joint effort. Of course, the planning on the district heating side is the responsibility of the district heating company itself. But then in such a densely populated city, of course, you directly get into public streets and into public space and public areas. Has been one of the debates as well between the municipality and us. okay, what is then the direction we should go? Can we be in the sideways of the streets? Should we be below asphalt streets? On what depth should the district heating grid be? And all these kinds of elements also add to the cost, of course. So making it more complicated or having higher criteria for realizing these kind of grids makes it more costly. And we have really been able to open this discussion on this transparent business case and really see, okay, what does it do when we have a slighter, more ease regulation, for example? What does it do for the investment, and how does it then help in getting costs down in the end for the end customer?
Maybe to add on that, I think everyone is responsible for their own planning. So of course, Vattenfall is responsible for the planning of the distribution network. The city of Rotterdam itself is responsible for the planning of the sewer network, and the corporation are responsible for their own renovation programs. But what we try to do is coordinate and see if, by coordinating, you can have more smart overall planning. But in the end, everybody, of course, is responsible for their own planning. And I think in the Netherlands, we have a good habit of having an open discussion. And sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't agree. But as long as you have the same objectives and goals, and you can understand each other on that level, usually, even if you have heated discussions, you keep on working together. And I think that really is what is going on here.
Super, thanks, guys. Wouter Verdan asks, Petra mentioned that the transition for households is still voluntary. When do cities get or need the authority to be able to end the delivery of natural gas in order to gain enough speed in the transition?
Well, like I said in the presentation, there's still legislation being drawn up on that point. And to be honest, as a municipality, we have mixed feelings about that. On one hand, we really want that power to make it mandatory. I mean, we asked for it also in the lobby process from the national government. But on the other hand, there's a lot of questions going through our mind, like if we make it mandatory as a city, what does that mean? And what does that mean for a household who really cannot afford it? First comes the question, we need the instruments, that's no doubt about it, but how do you put it to use and when do you put it to use? That's still a lot of questions we have. But in the end, at one point or the other, you have to make it mandatory. And to be exact, the legislation will make it mandatory to phase out natural gas, but it doesn't make it mandatory to, for instance, be connected to the district heat. So you can have different solutions to be natural gas free.
Super. Okay, I believe we have about 2 minutes, and I've got 2 questions left. First, from Susanna Padekoop, what happens to those who do not want to participate? Do they retain gas indefinitely or until the next decision moment, or do they simply have to go all electric?
I think I probably answered part of that question in my previous answer. In the end, if the legislation is in place, we can make it mandatory. But maybe to clarify, sometimes it's very logical that people say, well, I just bought a new boiler. So I bought it 5 years ago, and they say it's not good timing now. But maybe if you ask me again in 5 years or 10 years, then I will make the decision to change.
And I really like that approach as well in Rotterdam, that we actually say, okay, one moment is next year, and then 5 years later you have a second timing that you can choose to connect to district heating in this case. So that helps people, giving them some sort of horizon to say, okay, I don't have to decide today. I also can decide in a couple of years from now.
Super. And one last question before a quick wrap up. Thank you for the nice presentation from Emilia Motoasca. Thank you for the presentation. How are the efforts of renovations and district heating implementation synchronized? As in, how do you marry the two processes of reducing demand in the buildings and expanding district heating?
That's also one of the discussions we are having for the scaling up. For example, what temperature level does the district heating come into the homes? And we see that we think at least that you have to think in time scales. We are aiming for 2050 CO2 free. We also see for the decarbonization of the heat that it's necessary to connect, for example, low temperature heating sources like aquathermal or solar thermal or geothermal, lower temperature maybe, in order to be fully renewable. Then, of course, district heating temperatures also in the networks have to be lowered, or at least to a certain level. So we are also in this kind of discussion with the housing corporations. Okay, how can we do this, and how is the path going to that situation? And you have to time those. You have to really get them synchronized in level, but also see, okay, you do not have to do that at once. You do not have to do a whole renovation or insulation of homes up until the highest level of efficiency before you can connect to district heating. The higher temperatures now are available, and we can lower them in the course of the years. But that it has to be planned. You have to have a synchronization there.
Super. Sounds very sensible to me. Look, thank you both so much for this. Maybe I can finish just by picking up on a phrase that you used, Petra. At some point, we need to stop piloting and scale up. I think all of us in the district heating business can think about those words. As I said at the beginning, there are more and more expectations on district heating to play a major role in the transition in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, and in Europe. And at some point, we will need to see a really pronounced acceleration of the growth of district heating and the evolution of district heating away from more traditional systems towards those that are more efficient and more based on renewables and waste heat. So that should really drive us forward these next 10 years, getting towards 2030 and beyond. And I hope that this afternoon's webinar has given us all some food for thought as we try and move in that direction together. I'd like to thank you all for being with us this afternoon and remind you that the EHP Congress process goes on. So check our website, stay tuned to our social media and so on for the next upcoming events. And we'll see you all soon. Marcus, perhaps a last word from you as you're just here.
Just very short, thank you again, and thanks especially to Petra again, also in the name of Vattenfall as a group. We are really happy and proud to have you as a partner in these projects in Rotterdam.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you soon.